Hey, started off with Aero, why don't you? This is video number 4. Trigger warning again. It's more domestic violence or abuse, stuff. Because it's I will talk more about the mental abuse than I will any physical abuse, because it was far worse, and I always do think that it is far worse. Obviously there are people who fight for their lives after physical abuse, and my physical abuse was not that bad. It wasn't good, but it wasn't that didn't get to that stage anyway, but the mental abuse was horrendous. So anyway, I've got to a point now where me and the kids have moved into a house with him. Now I'm not going to say where it was, because he's still got family there, but what I didn't know when I was moving into the house is that all his family lived in this little town, village, whatever you want to call it. And I mean all his family. And he was from a good Catholic family as well, so there were 6 kids there. And 3 of them lived in the same road. Oh! Sorry. Come here, little one. Come on, over there. Come on. As you can see, I do this live. In reality, come over the wall. And this little pup wants to be on the road instead of in the grass with me. Come on, over there. Come on, good girl. Yeah, so little did I know, they all lived within minutes of each other, and he moved us there, which was probably a bus or 2 away from my family, not far. But to be honest, in the end it felt like I might as well have been on a different planet, never mind anywhere near my family, the way it went. So yeah, we've moved into this house, and this is where his behaviour sort of slows up. Not in that he stops doing the things he's already been doing, he does do that, but it's far more, it's almost as if he's got me where he wanted me, which is in a house on my own with the kids and him. So he felt he had more control, and he did. And so I feel like the things that happened and went, either they were very subtle, or the plan that was used was very, very clever, so that I didn't see things coming, or I didn't understand it anyway. I didn't know where these things were coming from. There were many times I'd say to him that it was like something off a movie, something I'd watched on the TV, and that my family would be absolutely astonished at the way I was living my life. But that was at a point where I didn't see them. But in the beginning, yeah, we lived in this house in Morton. I went to see my mum every Monday. He came with me for an hour or so, I suppose. If there was ever any family things going on, or like, Kathy came up one time, they all went out for the day, and she said, could I go? And he said no. I was never allowed to do anything straight away, to be honest, and I knew I wouldn't be, so something was instilled in me then already that I knew I wouldn't be able to go to these things. And yeah, it was a gradual process then, of he'd start off with getting in a temper, and he'd use a baseball bat to smash a cupboard. He'd punch holes in walls and doors, and that's how it'd start off when he was getting in a temper. And 9 times out of 10, I couldn't see what he was getting in a temper about. I didn't really know what was making him angry, or how to stop something making him angry, because I didn't know what had caused it in the first place. I can't actually physically remember the first time he hit me, and maybe that's a good thing. I literally have absolutely no memory of the first time it happened. I can remember the first time he did something, which was the baseball bat, that sort of alerted me to a massive overreaction to something really stupid. Massive overreaction. But I absolutely cannot remember the first time he hit me. I presume I must have been just so shocked, because it was, as to me, it was like something out of the movies. I don't know. But gradually that became quite a normal thing. And I'd never see it coming. Never see it coming. I used to think to myself, why don't you duck, or why don't you move out the way, or why don't you, do something to stop him hitting you? And one time when I was thinking that, I realised it was because I never saw it coming. At that point, I never saw it coming. He'd literally be talking to me, and he'd either smirk with this horrible look on his face, and I'd just think he was, because it was never anything that major anyway. And then the next thing, the hand had come, and before I did, just had no chance to get away from it, because it was from 0 to 60 in a second, 2 seconds. There was definitely no ducking it. Then there got to times where I did. I was maybe it wasn't that. Maybe it was that I knew it was coming. It's not that I saw it coming. Maybe I knew it was coming. I can remember him chasing me around the table to try and get hold of me. I can remember, and this is horrific, I can remember picking our Dan up because I thought, if I've got a baby on my knee, he's not going to hit me. And instead of doing that, he started kicking me. So he didn't hit me up here because I had the baby up here. He started kicking me instead. And there are lots and lots of stories I could tell you like that. That his family knew what he was like. I don't know if they knew. I'm making excuses for them, aren't they? They knew what he was like. I had a conversation with one of his sisters, and she asked me, did he hit me? And I said yeah. And because he'd obviously had previous. And she said, just hit him back, pick up a pan, do whatever, hit him back. And I never had the courage. I did try once, but that would be for a later story. I was just too terrified of if I did something like that, I'd end up dead, or I'd end up absolutely battered, and you just end up getting used to hiding the bruises. And he always did it where it wouldn't be seen. Always. Never the face, never anywhere that you'd see it. But the control, I mean, that's on the physical side. The control had started getting much, much worse from then on in. I can't remember at what point it happened, but at a certain point I did leave him a few times and went and stayed at my mum's, and fear took me back all the time. I had basically a lifetime, no, not a lifetime, sorry, however many years of being told morning, noon and night how I was no good, nobody else would ever want me, just total put downs, no self-esteem, no self-worth or anything. And if I'm honest, I think some of the times that I went back was almost, some of them would be to prove to him what I had done, and that I had been okay, and that things, I hadn't been what he'd said I was going to be. And also, definitely on the first couple of times, I thought he'd change. I thought he'd, come here pup. I thought he'd, I thought everything would be different. I thought he'd learn a lesson. I certainly didn't learn the lesson, did I? And he never did. And on those occasions, I only went usually for a couple of days or something like that. And it was massively fear. It threatened my family, threatened my kids, threatened me. Just all kinds of nasty, horrible stuff. And I was in no fit position mentally to be able to fight that. I really wasn't. I think. I got to very, very, very low places along this life I was living with him, and on one of the times I had left and had gone back, he'd said that he'd go to a relationship counsellor. It might have been marriage guidance. We might have got married in this point, because another thing I did was he pushed for us to get married, and I agreed to it, thinking that he'd change, thinking that once we were married he'd be confident in me, he'd know I wasn't going to leave him, he'd know that I loved him and that I wanted to be with him, he'd change, he'd be different, things would be different. And do you know what they were? They were worse. They absolutely got worse, because it was like he owned me then. I was his. You are my wife. There's another thing about him saying that was after I'd properly left him that gives me shivers. Anyway, which I'll tell you later on. But yeah, and so on this one occasion when I'd gone back and he said he'd go for marriage guidance, we ended up talking at the doctors, and it was the nurse and the doctors, and they sat in a room with us for half an hour talking, and she didn't get anything about what I was saying at all. She didn't. Nothing was picked up or anything at all. Of course, he was sat there with me. We just had this one. Anyway, they gave me some antidepressants, which I didn't have any clue what antidepressants were at that time. And I thought you'd take one and you'd feel better. And anyway, I took one thinking I'd feel better, put them in the drawer, went to take them the next day, and they were gone. He wasn't going to let me take the antidepressants either. Again, I presume just another control thing. Or maybe he wanted me depressed. Maybe. Oh yeah, that's exactly what it was, wasn't it? I could have got stronger if I wasn't depressed, couldn't I? And I could have left him and I had the guts. Oh God. Let's see the realisations you have all this time later. But the control ended up being that he cut everybody off. Absolutely everybody. No friends. I've got a massive big family. No family, not even my mum. You know, my mum's 70th birthday, they had a big family party and I wasn't allowed to go to it. They sent me an invite, but I wasn't allowed to go to it. And all my kids went, because at that point I didn't have my kids. Well, that's another day. Because I think this is going to be enough of a story for one day. So at this point I am as low as you can possibly be. The physical violence is well and truly happening, and the mental abuse is just getting worse and worse and worse. I have absolutely no money. He never lets me have any money. We were on benefits at the time. Well, on benefits, but he was a singer in a band and used to go, and I'd have to go absolutely everywhere with him. I was never allowed to be anywhere on my own. If he went out anywhere and left me in the house, he'd take one of the kids with him, so he'd know I couldn't leave the house, because I wouldn't leave him with one of the kids. He had every base covered, and yeah, literally no money whatsoever. I couldn't so much as put a shopping thing in the shopping trolley. He couldn't buy me kids a pair of socks. He controlled everything. He bought everything. He did everything. He just stripped me of absolutely every part of me. There was just nothing. I felt like a shell, absolute shell. I could not. I'd get washed of a morning, brush my teeth, and I could not meet my own eyes in the mirror. I literally couldn't, because I couldn't bear to see the sadness there. I couldn't bear to face myself in that mirror. I just couldn't bear any of it, and I literally would not look up when I looked in that mirror. There were just so many tactics, and that's what they were, tactics that he used. And he did. I didn't know that was what was happening to me. It's massive, this stuff. It's so big, and I actually didn't have it, anywhere near as bad as some other people have it. I know it's not the end of my story yet, and there is more stuff to come, and it is horrendous. But It's no way to live. If any of you are living this way, if you know anyone who is living this way, please, please, please encourage them to either watch these, read up on it, find out more. Knowledge of this sort of stuff is power. It does help you to cope, to deal with it, to realise that you're not the person they're saying you are, and that you know there is a life without them. There absolutely is a life without them, no matter how scared you are. It's all bullshit. And actually I'm saying that and I know it's not, because far too many women do die and are killed by partners. A lot of them haven't got the guts in them. If they're faced up to by somebody bigger and bolder, haven't done it, haven't got the guts, thank God, to carry those threats out. I know some are, and my heart goes out to people, because they were for the grace of God, you know. So I'm going to leave that there. It's a tough one. Remembering this stuff's quite tough. I'm okay though, you know. Like 5 minutes after I've come off the video, I'll forget it, be on to what I'm talking about the next day. And I do have a lovely life now, so I don't need to wallow in any of that shit, which is what it is. And Pop, come here. You're gonna get run over, Divvy. Look at this. Look up. It's my favourite thing to do. And actually I like it better in the winter when the wind's on my face. People who know me, that wind on your face and the tingle of the cold just makes me feel so alive. But in the sun it's pretty good too. So yeah, speak to you soon. Get in touch with me if you need to, or anybody. Just do something about it. Don't suffer in silence, please. Please don't suffer in silence. Thanks for listening. Bye.